Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Reinforce the Horse.
How are Reinforce the horse?
Yeah, how would you reinforce your horse?
I do reinforce my horse.
I reinforce my horse, too. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
How are you?
Kind of sleepy, but good.
I'm not sleepy today. I just had a nice espresso beverage from our local coffee shop called Talking Irons Coffee Saloon.
They're awesome.
Which is where Alyssa has gained her first legitimate employment. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a really great place. If you're ever in Pierce, Arizona,
go see Talking Irons. Just go visit them. They're awesome.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So there's our plug for Talking Irons Coffee Saloon in Pierce, Arizona. All right. So, Alyssa, what did you want to talk about today?
Your horse is just an animal.
My horse is just an animal? Or your horse is just an animal?
That's what we're talking about today, guys.
Yes.
So I guess to start out, we've heard a couple things. You know, they're just animals. Why treat them so well is how I understood it. If they're just animals, if they don't feel the same way we feel, they don't understand the same things that we do, and therefore they're just animals.
Well, arguably, I would feel sorry for horses or any other species for that matter if they felt and acted like we humans do. I mean, let's be real. Like,
seriously though, I hear you on that one because yeah, I agree. Us humans are just so cruel in so many ways, and not
largely. I would say like the cruelness is not the majority.
Yeah.
But just the fact that we have so many cruel-intentioned human beings, and not necessarily that they actually have cruel intent, but
and I mean, just
ignorant people that don't know any better and just do things that cause, quote, animals quite a bit of harm. So what do you mean by, like, your horse is not an animal?
Your horse is not an animal. Well,
yeah.
And I guess technically speaking, a horse is an animal. I mean, they're of the animal. I guess they're animals.
They're part of the animal kingdom, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And so, but in my opinion, like when you say the word animal, like what comes to mind? Like what
right when you say animal, I think of like a roaring lion that's about ready to maul my arms off.
It sounds kind of cruel.
Yeah.
It's like we're separating their intelligence and their being from ourselves. We're making ourselves superior to them. Like we know more, we can do more, we may be stronger, we're more powerful, but in so many ways we lack the power that the horses have. Like the horses are powerful animals, intelligent animals, creatures rather. They're so majestic, and when one is able to tune in and listen to them, it's like a different, like you've been brought to a different realm, and they're communicating with you with their just the slight flick of their ears, and you can understand that they don't want you to pet their nose anymore. They want a snack with just that, and their eye movement, and the way that they move their head, and their posture. And
have you heard at any point that like humans communicate more through body language and facial expression than we do with our actual verbally spoken words? Have you ever heard that?
No.
Yeah, so, and I don't know like what percentage it is, but the vast majority of our actual communication between like from human to human is our facial expression and like body posture and stuff like that.
That's really cool.
And so it's interesting because to me, like, we are very in tune with that, whether we know it or not, just by being human. We catch on to facial expressions and body postures long before a word even comes out of somebody's mouth. And
the horses communicate vastly through their body posture and their facial expressions.
Right. They don't have a verbal voice per se. I mean, very rarely do they actually make noise through their mouth. I mean, ours do. Like every time we come out and walk toward them, they give that soft, sweet, like, whisper nicker, we call it. You know, they're whispering to us, and and the way I interpret that, they're just like really excited to see us and really excited to be reinforced, be it by our presence, by our attitude, by the things that we're doing with them, and of course treats. You know,
they like snacks.
And snacks. They're big animals and they like to eat a lot.
They love food. Which, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I like food too.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine though, like if like your diet, and even vegetarians or vegans, like have more than just like grass to eat, you know?
Yeah, but Willow gets so excited when I bring her hay net out of the barn.
Right.
Like, you have hay?
And
man, that's delicious. And then she sniffs it and she's like, yeah.
But she has a full hay net and you go to fill up the other one and she's like all excited about the refill and she'll even eat some of the refill, but she's got the full one that didn't even need to be refilled. It happens a lot.
It's hilarious.
So what I heard you just say is, without saying it, I don't think you said it directly, but horses in particular aren't just animals.
Yeah, exactly.
So, dissect that a little bit. Like, explain to us what you mean by that, and like how's this helping people who are listening and thinking about their own horse?
Well, possibly it'll be eye-opening, just to give it the thought of just, I mean, looking and observing your horses, or horses down the street, your neighbor's horses maybe. But, I mean, for me, I mean, like you mentioned, an animal, when that word comes to mind, you think of something vicious, something scary, something that just wants to, like, tear you up or tear something up, like a carnivore. That's essentially what comes to mind.
For you.
For me. I mean, for other people.
And so it's safe to say that.
And that's a very dynamic thing, I'm sure.
Well, I think it's safe to say that not everybody's going to have this opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, some people might just classify all non-humans as animals, whether or not they have an idea of like that being an aggressive animal or a soft, cuddly animal.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be clear that we're not saying the word animal in and of itself is bad. Mm-hmm. We're saying the attitude in which we approach that.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So, and you mentioned something like, well, you said just sit there and observe your horse. And like, and you and I have been talking a lot about mindfulness lately, and specifically like, I mean, the horses, I believe, live in the present moment all the time.
I think many of our furry friends do.
Yeah, like they don't have a timeline.
Yeah.
Like they're not concerned with like what's going to happen. Like, are they going to have enough food to eat in a day, 2 days, a week, a month, a year? They're concerned with like, I'm hungry and somebody should feed me now.
Yeah.
When they're at play, they're concerned with getting that energy out and having a good time. Like whereas humans, we reason into the future, or we more or less like wallow in the past.
Yeah.
It takes us, and what I'm finding, at least for me personally, it takes me a lot of effort to be in and remain in the present moment. So the horses have helped me tremendously in doing that. And in that way, I've come to know and recognize them as much more than just an animal.
Yeah.
And this actually does kind of have a ripple effect to all the other animals on our farm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I mean, for us, we spend a lot of time with our horses, Willow and Cody. But, I mean, just simply sitting out there and watching and listening to them, it's quite fascinating. And I take it back, way back, I mean, in May of 2021 when Willow came home. And she was, I mean, a Mustang that was very baseline gentled. And for the first, while, I couldn't even go in her pen without her, like, just being scared. And so I'd feed her, and I'd just sit there and read a book or listen to some music, and sometimes I just sit there and I just like fall asleep just watching her eat, and her ears, like, she's always watching and listening to her surroundings, which is really cool. I mean, they'll hear a car way off in the distance and they'll like tip an ear toward it to listen because it's not close enough for them to think it's a threat, but they hear it.
yeah,
or they'll feel us coming, they'll feel us walking from like before we get out of our house in the morning, and they'll just like turn their ears up toward us and they'll get all excited. The minute they hear the front door open, they're I hear you,
yeah,
get out here and come and let me out of my pen because I want to come out and play with you. Like, they get all excited.
yeah,
and
yeah. So their situational awareness is like, it's fascinating. And we talked about this like in the Eyes of the Horse session that we did, and some of it, how they have better eyesight in a lot of ways than we do, better hearing. So
they're always in tune with it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
but they're in tune with it, but it's not like, see, like when I try to be aware or like increase my situational awareness, it's difficult for me to be aware in that way and still be present.
mm-hmm.
It's like for them, they have like this innate ability to be present in what they're doing, but also kind of cast that large net around them to like, so they don't get eaten in the wild.
Mm-hmm. It's like, is that a threat? Is that not a threat? Not a threat? Okay, I'm gonna keep eating.
Yeah.
Or if that's a threat, I mean, in the wild, it's fight or flight. And, I mean, Willow's a very flighty Mustang. If there was a threat, she most likely would have just started. Which, she saw me as a threat for the first while, remember?
So, in the beginning, when you first got Willow, did you think of her as just an animal at that point?
No, because there was a really interesting, like, freaking awesome connection that went with Willow coming home. And, I mean, the first time I went to see her was very emotional for, I think, both of us, because just merely a month before I had lost Mocha and, went to see Willow at the end of April, and it was just such an emotional moment. Like, this horse, I knew that she was, like, destined to come home with me. Like, we were, like, telepathically talking as I was in the pen with her for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very interesting kind of talking, because she was, more or less forced to stand there with me. She had a halter and a lead rope on, and, but she, like, submitted to me, if you will. She put her head down, and she licked her lips, and she cocked her foot. She took a deep breath. She gave me all the signs that she was content with me being around. And I hadn't moved her feet once. I hadn't given her any treats. And
yeah, you were just there. You were just present with her.
Yeah. Without even knowing that, because we hadn't really dove into what that even meant when I first met
right.
her. But I knew, I had been spending time with a neighbor's horse at the time, and I knew going to see Willow, like, she was coming home with me, and I was going to do everything in my power to make sure she did, and she was going to do the same. And, not to say everything from there was, cupcakes and rainbows, because it certainly wasn't. Willow didn't trust me, and to her defense, I didn't trust her either. That comes, that's one thing horses have taught me. is easy with who and what you trust.
Uh,
And
that's a really good topic for a whole nother session.
That's a yeah.
Trust and how that actually plays out into our human to human relationships.
Yeah,
as
but
well.
to answer your question, I mean, she had many wild traits in her when she first came home, but I never saw her as, quote, just an animal.
Just an animal.
She had her ways of communicating with me and letting me know, hey, you're too close.
And so, like,
very similar to how you do. I mean, if I like lean on you, you're like, okay, get off.
Right.
Like, okay. I mean, with Willow, it was approaching, and she'd like look at me and do this, like, no, thank you, no, thank you, and then I'd step away, and she'd, thank you for stepping out of my space.
Yeah.
So
it seems, I mean, we've already established that we're not really picking on the word animal, but more so the attitude in which we approach these friends of ours. And like, it seems like a lot of times, in my observation, the attitude that we don't want to have comes out when people tend to put their priorities and expectations above the horse,
and above everything else.
And then that's where it gets into the situation that, okay, it's going to be my way or the highway, and then we treat them in a way that is, not respecting their power and their
or
grace,
their space, or their anything else for that matter.
So what are some things that you can think of that can help people maybe kind of take the temperature, so to speak, with regard to their attitude toward their horse? Does anything come to mind?
Well, I mean, definitely listening to their subtle cues of no thank you. That's a common one. I think I find, like, they say yes a lot, but they also say no, and more times than not, their no is very polite. And even regardless of if you've actually, like, if that's a trick that you've taught them, I mean, a horse, I think, like any other creature on the face of this earth, knows what they want to be yes and no. I mean,
I think so.
So, yeah. I mean, the horses, for example, I mean, before maybe teaching the no thank you with touching an object or, whatever that may be.
Or a specific movement of their body or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, watch for how they pull away from you if they don't want to be touched. Right. Or where their eye movements go, how their eyes look, their ears, their body posture, how they're breathing even.
It's interesting. I've been listening a lot lately to Warwick Schiller's Journey On podcast, which I've totally fallen in love with. If you haven't listened to any of it, it's great. It's called Journey On. Anyways, he had talked about in a couple different sessions, he brought up just like being observant at the level of like simply seeing the horse's ear flick ever so subtly. And you mentioned that at the beginning, but when I first started being around horses, like I had like absolutely no realization or understanding of any of that, so I was like a very clean blank slate.
Likewise.
What's that?
Likewise.
Yeah. And had absolutely no idea, like, even how they attempt to communicate. And I'm fascinated by my heightened awareness to their communication and how that is actually like played into me being able to read and interpret even the human to human interactions that I've had.
Yeah.
Like I'm much more aware of people's body language and posture than I ever have been in my entire life.
That's awesome.
To some extent, that hasn't always worked out, at least recently, like perfectly, because it's not like it's almost like sometimes with humans, I feel like I'm now like almost like too in tune. Like I pick up on so like little subtle things that
I'm the complete opposite
it's
in that way.
interesting.
I feel like I communicate better with the horses than I do with like humans.
That's what I mean.
That sounds crazy.
That's kind of where I'm going at with that.
But,
I just have a different perspective or perception of reading somebody's facial expressions and body language and posture than I ever have in the past, and it's caused me to maybe anticipate what their mood is more than I have in the past. And so that can be off-putting, especially if they're giving me the feeling that they're not in the greatest mood.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
See, I'm like the total opposite in that way. And maybe it's like I don't want to be in tune with the people around me. I mean, I kind of get that a lot, but I don't know. I guess it kind of depends. I feel like I've always like kind of had this weird energy around people, larger crowds especially. Like I just don't particularly enjoy being around a ton of people. It kind of makes me nervous, but I could be around a herd of horses and feel perfectly content and practically be able to hear what every one of them needs or wants at any given time. Isn't that weird? But
I don't think it's weird.
I mean, and we have a very small herd of 2 horses, but even with just, allowing them to go off and do their own thing when they decide that they want to go off and do their own thing, just watching them and listening to them, like, it's really cool. And it's down to the point where, they'll be grazing and Cody will be like, okay, I'm thirsty. It's like, what did you just say? And he'll walk up to his pen and get some water and then come back out and graze.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I think you started catching on to that before I did. And then now it's like, even this morning, I was like, he's thirsty. And within like 20 to 30 seconds of me thinking that, he like put his head up and walked over and got water. It's a pretty bizarre thing. Like, and there's been so many moments like in the past, like 2 to 4 weeks for me, like a couple nights just this past week, like I actually have fallen asleep with, outside of their pen, but you know how our pens are set up to where like we can kind of sit in the corner of where their pens meet, and they can both be right there. And they both were, and they both laid down, and I even laid down on the ground. It was kind of cold, and I fell asleep for like a half hour.
Wow.
And with them both laying down, and it was just such like a peaceful presence. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this in another session where we were talking about our horses laying down, but all that to say, they're just so, they're not animals to me.
Yeah.
In the negative sense of that word. Yeah. And I guess what we're trying to do is just encourage you, if you maybe are struggling with some areas of training your horse, because we're in quite a few Facebook groups, and especially like for the Mustangs, and people constantly posting questions about like my horse doesn't let me touch him, or I can't get close to him, or she's not progressing this way or that way. And it seems like a lot of people, especially like in the wild Mustang arena, and we've only been in it a very short time really, but it seems like so many people are so hell-bent on a timeline.
That
and performance. Yeah, it's like, and it's really cool to see people's performance and timeline, like, we're like 4 or 6 weeks into it, and we're riding, or we're doing this, or we're doing that, and that's all fantastic. I love it, and I love to see it. But at the same time, what I'm trying to say is like each one of these horses, they're individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And just as us humans, we're individuals, and like we all have strengths and weaknesses. And so, for instance, like an an Olympic gold medalist is going to have a different approach to, say, I don't know, let's use like a, a gold medal skier, is going to have a different approach to skiing than I would,
Mm-hmm.
And their personality, their background, and everything around that topic is going to be completely different for me than it is for them. And similarly, like with the horses, like I think we pigeonhole ourselves into like, okay, it's just a horse, it's just another animal, and therefore it should be able to do the same thing that that person's horse does and that person's horse did in the same time frame. And
in my opinion, that's why so many of them, I guess speaking Mustangs, are put into the last chance.
right.
I mean, they're adopted and then they're essentially thrown away. They're given
Right.
back to the Bureau of Land Management and then adopted again. It's 3 times they're adopted and given back. And many of them are sold to like kill buyers or
I just saw last night
but all because they can't perform well or they can't, like, I've had this horse for 3, 4, 5 months now and I still can't touch it. I still can't go close to
right.
touching it.
Yeah.
And it's that,
And so therefore it's an animal, and it's
it
not
can't
worth
give to pressure.
Right.
And it can't, like, I've trained Mustangs for 50 years and I can't get this horse to, like, this horse is broken and in a bad way, so I'm gonna throw it away. And then, I mean, this horse
it's
lives
defective.
This horse lives a terrible life, and then there's those people who, I mean, very few come along and actually will rescue them and spend all the time in the world to get this horse to turn into them, and they treat them like they're an individual rather than just an animal who needs to perform right.
Right. And to be fair, it's cool because, and it brings to mind this one post that I saw a few days ago. It was like this person was saying like I can't touch the horse, and it's been a while. I think it's been a few months or whatever. And then, I've had somebody with much more experience come in and he couldn't do anything either.
Yep.
And then, but to be fair, that person is still like asking for, different techniques and ideas. And so, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I think collectively, most humans are pretty cool.
Yeah.
And, I see a lot of like responses to those questions in the positive. And, it's like, I don't see really anyone in those discussions that are like, well, just throw the horse away and forget about it. But ultimately, I think people get to a point where they don't think that there's a viable alternative. And they just don't have the understanding in themselves to do anything different.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding with the horses specifically is that it's more about us, like what's at our core, than it really is about the horse.
Yeah. And using this morning as an example, I mean, when you get into a rush and you just like need to be somewhere and you put that on the horse, well, they want nothing to do with you.
Oh, so explain that.
Well, so this morning,
like, give a little bit of context because it's a really good
So this morning
example.
I had somewhere to be and had like a very short amount of time that I had to get there, and so
and what happened? Our dogs like decided to go venture off to the neighbors,
and we got cold.
Yeah, and so I was like, "Hey, your dogs are at our house. Come get them." And so, not a dire emergency, but an emergency nonetheless, right?
And so I was out with Willow, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, let's go back to your pen because I got somewhere to be. And she was like, no, I'm gonna go graze over here. That fine with you? All right, cool. And she just like wanted to graze, and then I like tried this like silencing my brain for a second or so, and it just wasn't working.
Yeah, so
for me.
that's interesting. So you're probably like, okay, get in the present moment. Like,
Yeah,
I'm present with you. I'm paying attention now. Hurry up.
So it wasn't working for me, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna let you like be. And then when I got home and it was all fine, she was like, oh, okay, I'll walk in my pen with you now. That's cool.
Yeah, and so we were gone maybe 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
And when we came back, she was just like, in fact, she had walked over by her pen.
Yeah, she was like, oh, I'm going to sit by Cody. And I was like, well, will you walk to your pen with me? She's like, yeah, sure. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
So it's all about mindset and like what's going on at and within our core and how we ultimately like hold ourselves in that way. And I found that even so just the past couple of weeks we've been and we haven't changed this at all. Like we've been totally at liberty the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
With both of them. And the remarkable so on January 1st we went on a walk around our property. The four of us.
It was very windy and rainy and cold.
And well, not cold for some parts of the country, but for us it was cold.
Yeah, it was like, it was like 40 degrees.
Or 30 something, yeah.
It was chilly for us.
Yeah.
So we had our layers on and our jacket, it was windy, our jackets were flapping, things were kind of flying in the air. And this was the very first time we had let the horses out like together, and both of them were off the halter, and it was just us walking with our treat pouches and the horses, and they like all four of us had this like epiphany, if that's even the right word for it.
Yeah, and like just like an extreme connection.
Seriously,
like we all felt it, and
it was like, well, what just explain to me what just happened here. And it was like they kind of like, so I guess to put it into a little bit more detail, prior to this, Willow, if we had Willow on the halter and Cody off, Cody would want to be with Willow and vice versa. And this was the very first time that like my dad and Cody were at the one end of the property and me and Willow were at the complete other end of the property, and they didn't even care for each other. Like, they were just with us and in tune with us. And, we'd, like, kind of cross paths and we walked together for a while. And they were just, like, we were all in perfect harmony.
Yeah, it's like, to me, the way I interpreted that is, like, they both accepted us as herd members. Yeah.
And ever since that day, it's been like, okay, well, you want to come out? Okay, cool. Are you thirsty? Okay, cool. I am kind of thirsty, too. I'm going to go get some water.
And the cool thing that I've noticed, like, since that day, specifically, like, since that day, like, I go to let them out in the morning, and instead of them just like walking past me to like
go to the shed,
the feed shed, which is normally what Cody does, make a beeline to the feed shed, he doesn't anymore. He turns right into me and he's like, hey, how's it going?
It's like they're saying good morning. Like, they're like, hey, nice to see you.
And then he just like sticks by my side, and like, we don't have to catch them per se. Like they don't want to be caught.
No.
They want to be respected as
individuals,
as much as we do.
Yeah.
And I think we've mentioned this before. Like, every living thing desires connection. So I'm reading that book by
Naked Liberty by Carolyn Resnick.
Yeah, Naked Liberty by Carolyn Resnick. Fantastic book. And she's a fantastic storyteller, and she's
excited to read it.
She's talking about how I think she was like 8 or 10 years old or something, and she lived in Southern California in the desert, lots of scorpions there. And she talks about how one morning she got stung by a scorpion that was in her bed. And
In her bed?
yeah.
That'd be scary.
And so she got stung, and the scorpion was a little injured as a result. So she decided, she put it in a fishbowl and kept it as a pet. And she literally like trained this scorpion.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and she talks about how like she like it would dance on cue.
How do you train a scorpion?
So here's the point with that. It's like my idea is like every living thing at their level of like how they can conceptualize thought, however their brain is constructed, they desire connection. Now, it might not be the same sort of like connection that you and I desire, but they desire some sort of connection nonetheless. I mean, we see that even like
I saw it even with my chameleon.
Ants, chameleons.
I had a chameleon, and he, I say quite often he hated my guts, but there's a lot of, and I mean, sometimes I feel like I have good reason, but then there were some times where I'd, walk in and he would just like turn a really interesting, like beautiful light green, and he'd just like stand there and be like, "Hey, how's it going? Kind of enjoying your presence right now." And it's like, mostly when I was like sad or just kind of needed to chill, like he's like a lava lamp. Pascal died on the 2nd of this month, the 2nd of the year, and that was like, it was a really, really sad day. But I feel like in a lot of ways, him and I did connect through his life.
And that's my point. Even a scorpion that just stung a human, like
I never would have thought a chameleon or a scorpion. Gosh darn.
They're not just animals.
They're not.
And this isn't like, I'm not a vegan, and I have no problem with that. I think it's actually like a really cool discipline. But I do eat meat. We farm to some degree. We're not like professional farmers or anything, but we've raised chickens, we've raised pigs for consumption. I've thought about it in different ways. Like, it's been a while since we processed any animals for food. But it's always difficult.
It's rough.
I cried my eyes out a number of times.
Well, you pull the chickens on your own.
It's
different than the pigs.
The pigs we've taken to a butcher. The chickens we processed on our own. But no matter what, it's still life, In Carolyn's book, she even talks about like where their tack was held. It was in their pump house, and it's like infested with black widows. As we know, like in the desert, black widows are everywhere, and largely they're not harmful. And she said for like the 40 or 50 years, that pump house has been around, she has no knowledge of anybody ever getting bitten by a black widow.
Wow.
And I remember listening on NPR years ago. They had
a Halloween story.
Yeah, they had some arachnologists talking about arachnids, spiders,
but particularly the black widows.
Yeah, and so they studied the black widow, and they said that they actually they had to squeeze the black widow to get it to actually bite, which is really interesting. So the idea of you're sleeping and a spider of any kind really just hunting you out on your bed, and that really doesn't happen.
They just look scary.
According to the experts, they do. And where I'm going with this is I've killed plenty of spiders in my life, and I'm really not a big fan of killing anything. But when they do come into the living area, that's a different story, I think, than them being out in a shed or a pump house or something like that. I don't go around searching in nature just to find spiders that I can kill or whatever, and even like in the living environment, I don't go and search them out. If I see them or they're creating, multiplying in it, which they're
In
not,
your
but
living
if
room.
they were, then I would
Put an end to
handle
that.
it. Yeah. I mean that just goes with like safe housekeeping,
Go
I think.
reproduce somewhere else,
Right.
spiders.
Yeah. But from that tangent, I guess what I'm getting at is that like it's kind of a soft way of approaching it, but every living thing desires some sort of connection.
Mm-hmm. Whether it's with like their own personal species or different species.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that statement, I believe that the horses specifically, there's a special connection that horses and humans have.
Yeah.
It's like there's an information superhighway between us when we are willing. I feel like they are always willing, like it's always open.
I
But
think so.
in like that pathway in our brains, in our being, is like encrypted. And like we have to get to a point in our being, in our thinking, to decrypt that and allow the communication to flow. Once it starts flowing, they reciprocate and they love it. And they start like doing like we're like I'm only okay, so we haven't even gone through a full month. So January 1st was that kind of eureka moment for everybody.
Yeah.
And we had been working on this for some months before. But January 1st was like, all right, now we're all on the same page.
We all accepted each other.
Yeah, but from that point, so what is it, the 28th today?
29th.
29th today. January 29th is, we're sitting here right today, 2022. And so in 28 days, I mean, now I go and like walk past the trailer and Cody's like, oh, I'll go on the trailer.
That's freaking awesome.
You know?
Yeah.
We walk around our 10 acres of property and they play. They run and they
be horses.
Yeah, they're horses. But they don't desire to venture off anywhere.
We've also spent a lot of time making ourselves high value reinforcers, so.
True story. But in that way, we're not treating them just as animals. Like, oh, well, you get your
you only
2 flakes of hay 3 times a day or whatever, and that's it.
Yeah,
you know?
Or you get treats when you're near me and you don't get to graze, or like they have freedom of choice. And they're respected as the individuals, and
or I'm only going to give you a treat, because I'm petting you or something like. It's something for me more than it is something for you.
And to be honest here, like they don't. Most of the time, there are some times where they do really care for the snacks.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's just like, hey, I'll just walk with you. That's nice. Oh, you're going to give me a treat? That's great.
Yeah, I kind of liken it to, like, if we're just kicking back, like, eating chips and salsa or popcorn or something like that.
Give me that.
Yeah. It's just kind of like, let's face it, it's not like a nutritional necessity, but it's just something that we enjoy.
Yeah, we're like sharing a snack, having a good conversation. Like, I talk to Willow while we're on walks.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really fun. Like, we just have, how's your day going? It's going pretty good. How's yours? And we just, like, have a nice conversation.
Yeah, it's great.
Like, my horse, she's super sweet.
So how can we wrap this up? Well, I'm feeling like if we could just give some thoughts or ideas for people who might be struggling with the connection with their horse. No?
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah. Do it. Summarize it.
Summarize it. So, I guess to summarize this long podcast episode, if any of you are maybe struggling to communicate with your horse, or are even just having a difficult time with life, I guess I'm speaking to you. Maybe try to observe, if you have horses, observe your horses really closely and try your hardest to listen to them and feel their no thank yous, and just then after you respect that, feel how you feel after that. Really
so
dive into that, because that's an awesome feeling that I feel. Now, if you don't have horses, maybe you have other animals, try it with your dogs, your cats even. I mean, if you don't have any animals and you're listening, that's fine too. Maybe try it with another family member in the household. Just try really respecting their no thank yous. I mean, you're a sister like me, you have a younger sibling or an older sibling, and it's like, hey, can I borrow that for a minute? No, it's okay. Or no, you can't have that. Say, okay, thanks. Walk away. And just see how that makes you feel. I know as an older sister, sometimes that's like, but I need that. But sometimes just taking a step away is what we both need.
That's really good. Yeah. And I would just piggyback on that and say, I think before we can actually be open to understanding somebody else's no thank you, we have to have a pretty calm mind. And for me, that hasn't been easy to accomplish. And so I like the idea of a daily meditation practice or mindfulness practice. I personally use the Headspace app, and so I got started on that 6 years ago.
What are you, like pro level 5?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's all different courses within it. I'm actually I just started pro level 7 or 8 in Headspace, but I mean it's broken down. They're 10-day courses, so it's not like super difficult, but really profound, like the stuff. And the more I practice that, it's interesting because it's almost like the universe creates opportunities for me to get it right, or opportunities for me to understand and realize where more work needs to be done within myself. And so I'll walk away from the 10-minute, because I usually do a 10-minute Headspace session in the app, and then I spend 10 to 15 minutes in silence with the horses every night. That's kind of like my nightly routine before bed. And so with that, it's not like, I do this mindfulness stuff and like I'm like Buddha himself, like it's more so like, okay, I do this mindfulness stuff, and then and you've noticed this just the past couple weeks for me, like I've been really on edge, and like just seemingly small things have like really gotten on my nerves. And I've had some moments where I've just been like, bah. And the way I interpret that is like, all right, so I'm practicing mindfulness, and it gets easy when you're in silence and you're chilling out here at least, and underneath the stars, and it's calm, and that's the easy part. But then the rubber meets the road, where you're living life and you have to apply that same focus and remain in the present moment when life is happening.
Yeah.
And the more you practice it, I think the more you'll have an opportunity to excel or not in those areas. Right. So that's what I would say. And so piggyback on what you just said is just to do some sort of mindfulness or meditation practice on a daily basis, because in my thinking that will allow you to be much more open and aware to those subtle cues.
Yes, most
in
definitely.
Communication. Cool.
Yeah. So thank you so much for everyone for watching
or listening. as a reminder, you can find us on reinforcethehorse.com.
And on Facebook, we have a group called Reinforce the Horse.
Yeah, there's a Facebook page and a Facebook group. The group is still not very active, but that's okay. I think we have like 47 members. So if
you're interested in seeing my father's daily articles he posts on there, they're pretty legit. And we go on live. We've been going on live pretty frequently.
Yeah.
You can just kind of tune in on a bit of our daily things that we do with Willow and Cody, get to know them a little bit more. Through the podcast here, you don't really get to see much of them, but definitely we go live every so often, and you can see some funny moments. Also, we are looking to get some more guests for our story series that we want to kick out. We have our stories recorded, and we have had one guest so far.
Yeah, thank you, Jen Kirk from Dragonfly Meadow up in Canada. So she told her story as to how horses have had a positive impact on her life.
And that was awesome to speak with you, by the way.
And so we're really excited to get this story series out. I'm thinking we want 4 or 5 more people to tell their story.
And so if you are interested in telling your story, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. If you're like my dad and I here, and you just want to tell your story as to how horses have changed your life for the better,
just go to reinforcethehorse.com and you can click and schedule directly from the homepage there.
So hopefully we'll hear from you soon.
All right.
And thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Have a great day.
Bye.